In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Looking for whole food supplements for your ketogenic lifestyle? Then let me introduce you to Further Food. Go to furtherfood.com and you'll see that they source the highest quality ingredients on the planet. They have collagen peptides and my favorite, the gelatin powder to make those yummy gummies. And all of it is sourced from grass-fed, pasture-raised bovine collagen from Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. This is really high-quality collagen and gelatin. There's no hormones or antibiotics, it's non-GMO, and it's the most tasteless and easiest to use on the market. If you're not using collagen and gelatin, you need to be adding this to your ketogenic lifestyle. Collagen will help you curb your carb cravings. Again, head on over to furtherfood.com, enter the coupon code Jimmy at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your order. Elevate your wellness. Further Food. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. Here's how the fun begins. We start off on social media. I've been trying to mix it up a little bit, you guys, lately. I've been doing Instagram Lives pretty much for 6 months of this show. And recently we started mixing it up just a little bit, throwing it on YouTube Live. I'll probably go live on Facebook at some point. We're going to try to mix it around to hit all of you guys, not just my Instagrammers, but you guys secretly. Shh, you're my favorite. So go follow me on Instagram at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. You can also follow me on YouTube using that same username, so youtube.com/livinlowcarbman. Go and subscribe and have notifications turned on because I am going to be going live on there quite a bit. So make sure you never miss a single episode of Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live on Instagram, you can watch the replay for up to 24 hours over on Instagram. After 24 hours, we will move all of the past episodes in archived form over onto YouTube. So you will need to follow me there. Again, Livin' Low Carb Man, youtube.com/Livin' Low Carb Man, get you there as well. Finally, we have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is a question I have been asked many, many times over the years. And it's an interesting one because I don't think we've got a lot of research up until now that really says one way or another about what the right thing to do is. And it's this whole idea of, does it matter when you eat the foods that you eat, regardless of the diet that you do? Obviously, I talk about keto within my work, but does the meal timing really matter when it comes to the impact that it has on your weight and health? And so what I'm going to talk about here today is that very question. Does meal timing impact the weight loss and the health effects that come from keto? So I have a story here today. Eating later in the day may be associated with obesity. So let's take a look at this article, you guys. And if you're just joining us, meal timing, does it matter when it comes to keto? And we're looking at a new article that I believe is looking at some new research that's come out that looks at this particular question. Previous studies have suggested that the later timing of eating and sleeping are all related to obesity, according to the lead study author, Adnan Zaman. He's a medical doctor out of the University of Colorado in Denver. However, few studies have assessed both the meal and sleep timing in adults with obesity. It is not clear whether eating later in the day is associated with shorter sleep duration or higher body fat. So they don't know that there is an association. Let me give you an anecdote from my life, though. Because of my crazy schedule, I'm pretty busy a lot of times during the day. And so inevitably, if I go all day long, like today is a very busy day for me. I've got a couple of podcasts. Christine has her annual physical checkup that she's going to. Just got a lot going on. So I'm trying to think in my head, when can I eat today? And I typically have, as I noted in yesterday's Jimmy Rants, 1, maybe 2 meals a day. Today will definitely only be a 1 meal. So when am I going to get that in? And I notice, you guys, on those days that I eat later in the day, and later defined as after, say, 4, maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon, especially if I eat at, say, 6:30, that's no good. I actually end up having a poor night's sleep. I wear this ring, the Oura ring, that tracks how my sleep does and the various stages of sleep. I get less REM sleep. I get less deep sleep. I actually have my heart rate go to its lowest, the latest in the sleep cycle. Generally, it should be around the middle of the sleep cycle. But when I eat late, inevitably, it always ends up as right before I wake up is my lowest heart rate. And it's not good. And then I run into issues where my body temperature also is warmer, but that stands to reason. If your body's still having to digest food, it's pretty interesting, guys, because most people, they don't even think about food impacting their sleep. And so if you eat late in the day, your body has to digest that food. And think about the digestion process, depending on what you eat, even the best ketogenic meal. And if you're keto carnivore or carnivore and eat a lot of meat, your body has to digest all that food. And think about what happens during sleep time. Sleep is supposed to be when your body is repairing, but guess what? None of that repair can take place if your body's still having to digest food. And so for me, I'm becoming more and more convinced by this research that's coming out, and I'm going to share more about it here in a minute, but I'm becoming more and more convinced that meal timing does matter because of its impact on sleep, of all things. And so if you're just joining us, we're asking the question, does meal timing impact the weight loss and health effects that happen on keto, but really any diet? But since I talk about keto, we threw keto in the title. And so we've got this new study that's just come out that we just started talking about, looking at whether meal timing impacts sleep duration. And I would even say more than sleep duration. That's just length of time that you slept. I would think quality of sleep is impacted. And I've personally seen it in my REM sleep and my deep sleep, which I have a ring that lets me track that. I've seen it in my heart rate. I've seen it in the body temperature. Even respirations per minute all go up when I eat later in the day, defined as after 5 p.m. So let's continue reading from this story. The study used 3 types of technology to record participants' sleep, physical activity, and eating patterns. It's been challenging to apply sleep and circadian science to medicine due to a lack of methods for measuring daily patterns of human behavior, according to the lead study author. We used a novel set of methods for simultaneous measurements of daily sleep, physical activity, and meal timing patterns that could be used to identify persons at risk for increased weight gain. Well, the cool thing, guys, we live in a day and age where technologies abound. And so if they want to track this kind of thing, I told you about the Oura ring that I use. Go to biohackingring.com. You can get one of those. And it's basically just like kind of a Fitbit except for your finger. And it measures the various stages of your sleep. I know the Fitbit also does it. And some of the technology that they use, it's hit or miss. But the Oura ring has been really awesome. So biohackingring.com if you want one. But it's really interesting to watch how you physiologically react when you have a meal later in the day as compared to if you got all your meals in by 4 o'clock, for example. And they're starting to look at these things and their relationship to your weight and various health markers. So the week-long study, so it was just 1 week that they did this, you guys. They had 31 overweight and obese adults whose average age was 36. 90% of them were women, which is 27 of them would be women of the 31. They were enrolled in an ongoing weight loss trial comparing daily caloric restriction to time-restricted feeding. So like what we talked about yesterday with intermittent fasting, which means they could only eat during certain hours of the day. Participants wore this thing called an active PAL. It's an electronic device that they put on their thigh. And this device measured how much time they were in physical and sedentary activities. So, and it's similar to some of these others. I'm not sure why you would want to wear it around your thigh. Obviously, that's how this active PAL works, is they put it on your thigh. I guess if you're walking, it can sense it. But I get that from the Fitbit, and I get that from the Oura Ring. So anyway, that seems uncomfortable to stick it around your thigh, but we'll go on. They also wore this thing called an Active Watch, which assesses sleep-wake patterns. Participants were asked to use a phone app called Meal Logger to photograph and then timestamp all of their meals and snacks throughout the day. So the researchers found, and so guys, let me stop there for a second before I tell you what they found. This is good research. This is quality. You know how I talk about how there's really, really bad science that's out there where they're looking at data rather than people? They're looking at people. And your telltale sign that this was a good study, other than the link only being or the length of time only being 1 week, they did 31 people. And they physically put trackers on these people. And so that's good science. And this is what's referred to, you guys, when you've got this small data point of less than 50 people, is generally referred to as a pilot study. So when you're looking at doing really, really good research, you need a pilot study to test the concept on a very small number of people. And then once that number of people shows some result, then you're like, okay, now we have the foundation for doing a much larger scale version. They don't want to spend all that money on doing the research of a really large group if it's really not going to show them anything. So they do it on a small number of people, in this case 31 people, 27 of them women that are overweight and obese, and they did a really good study on them. So if you're just joining us, we're asking this question about meal timing impacting your weight loss and the health effects that happen on keto. And there's this brand new study that's out now that's looking into this specific issue. So let's continue. The researchers found on average that participants consume food throughout an 11-hour time frame during the day. They slept for about 7 hours a night. People who ate later in the day slept at a later time, but they slept for about the same amount of time as those who finished eating earlier. Now, that's interesting. So people who ate later in the day, that's kind of an arbitrary number. We don't know what time they actually ate, but they ate later in the day, slept at a later time, meaning they probably were still digesting all that food. And because all of that food was still in there, you guys know it's hard to go to sleep when you got a full belly. And I always hated that when we get back from maybe a late trip of driving all day and you'd be exhausted, but you'd be hungry. So, okay, well, I need to eat something. So you eat and then you're awake for the next 3 or 4 hours because your body can't calm down enough to go to sleep. And so they're finding people who ate later in the day, they couldn't go to sleep as early as they wanted to. And then they ended up sleeping for about the same amount of time overall as the people who ate earlier in the day and went to sleep earlier. And so later meal timing, they say in this study, was associated with a higher body mass index as well as greater body fat. And I'm wondering if the theory as to behind why that happens is these people aren't getting the full recovery while they're sleeping, because their body's still having to digest. Full digestion could take upwards of 6 to 8 hours for a lot of people, and depending on what you ate, that could be really detrimental. And those of us that eat keto, we tend to have a little more animal-based foods for the most part, most of us in this space. I'm doing a keto carnivore. So if I have my typical one meal a day and it's the keto carnivore and it's a lot of red meat, you guys, my body has to process and digest all of that food. So when I eat, you guys, I go to bed generally around 8 to 8:30 and I'm up at the crack of dawn, like 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to get in my meals probably no later than 3 o'clock. I try not to eat at all after 3 p.m. because I know if I don't, I won't sleep well. I'll sleep hotter. My heart rate will be higher throughout the night because, again, the digestive process is doing that. And I just don't feel well when I wake up the next day because my deep sleep and my REM sleep, according to the Oura Ring, isn't good. And so I believe that a lot of this higher body mass index and greater body fat is directly associated with your body can't fully repair when you're sleeping because you ate a meal that was later in the day. We used a novel set of methods to show that individuals with overweight or obesity may be eating later into the day, according to the lead research author. These findings support our overall study, which will look at whether restricting the eating window to earlier on in the day will end up lowering obesity risk. And given that wearable activity monitors and smartphones are now ubiquitous in our modern society, it may soon be possible to consider the timing of behaviors across 24 hours and how we approach the prevention and the treatment of obesity. So guys, that's the story, and I believe it. You know, all of those studies that have come out talking about breakfast as the most important meal of the day, I think this is why. This is one of the reasons why perhaps if you're going to eat 2 meals in a day, having breakfast and having lunch, and then that's all you're eating for the whole day. So let's say you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. before you go to work. Let's say you have your lunch at, say, 1 p.m. So you're eating in that 7 to 1 p.m. Feeding window, right? So what's that? A 6-hour feeding window, which gives you 18 hours that lets you intermittent fast. And people that don't eat keto, they don't understand how very easy that is when you eat ketogenic foods. The key, though, is making sure that you eat enough food in those meals so that you get the sustenance that you need for the whole day. And far too many people, they're just eating whenever, and they're not thinking about, does meal timing matter? I know my Keto Hacking MD podcast co-host, Dr. John Lemansky, has been tinkering with this himself. He also owns an Oura Ring that tracks the sleep during the night and tracks various parts of the sleep cycle and the body temperature and the respirations and all that stuff. And he's looked at this as well, whether eating earlier in the day and finishing your meals in the early afternoon as compared with not eating early in the day and then having a meal after, say, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Does it make a difference? So he and I are actually going to do some tests on that here in the coming months after we are done talking about stress. So the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, the question that we're talking about here today, does the meal timing impact your weight loss and the health effects when you eat keto? According to this new research, you guys, again, out of the University of Colorado, this new research makes the case that perhaps when you eat your meals does have an impact on your body mass index, your ability to burn stored body fat, and it makes the argument that if you're going to eat, and most of us in the keto world tend to eat about 1 to 2 meals a day. So if you're going to have those 1 to 2 meals a day, maybe that eating window should be from the morning till midday rather than midday to evening. All right, I want to see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. Thanks for being here on this episode of Jimmy Rants. Good morning, good morning. Thank you for being here. Bonnie says, I'm so glad this topic came up because we eat late a lot of times. Well, Bonnie, hopefully this gives you something to think about, maybe shifting it around just to see if it makes a difference. I do OMAD at dinner. Great subject. Thank you, Amy. Hopefully this helped you out. The Miracle of Keto, Dr. Sachin Panda is doing some fascinating studies about this. I try to stop eating by 7 p.m. because of having a family. If I had my way, I would probably eat around 4 p.m. and go to bed earlier too. Yeah, it's been fascinating to me. I have had some of the best sleep ever since I've shifted my eating pattern to earlier in the day. So today I've got a podcast coming up at noon and then another one at 3. So somewhere in between those two podcasts, I am probably going to have my one meal that I typically have in a day. And so that way, by the time that meal, let's say I eat it at 2 o'clock, by the time that meal is fully digested and I go to bed, it's fully digested. And then that way, the sleep that I have at night actually does what it's supposed to do, and that's help to clean up and heal and restore your body. Keto Glow Brittany says, I just started tracking my sleep. It's really bad. Got to find some more info on how to help with this. Well, Brittany, I'm happy to help you with that. If you'll reach out to me, I've got some tricks for you. Ashton says, I try not to eat past 4 p.m. My dinner meal is with my hubby at 3 p.m. when he gets home from work. That's awesome. See, you're already doing this. You already know this instinctively. The Miracle of Keto, I've been obese all my life, and normally I'm an evening eater. I'm trying to change that. It isn't easy unless I eat a lot of fat for dinner to stave off my evening hunger. And that's the other monkey wrench in this is people say they get the nighttime munchies, and I get that. I used to be the exact same way. And I'm wondering if you get munchies at night because you're having an abnormal cortisol response. I'm in the midst of doing some cortisol testing today just to kind of see how that's all going for me. But hunger is driven by hormones. And so if your cortisol is up, your blood sugar is up, it's going to make your insulin and ghrelin and all of the other metabolic pathways that open up to make you hungry, it's going to make them all go crazy. Which is why I love getting my circadian rhythm on with my sleep. Is during the daytime, I'm wide awake, I'm alert, I'm everything's good. But by like 6 o'clock, you guys, those of you that know me personally, you know, don't mess with Jimmy after 6 o'clock because I'm already, I'm out. And then by 8 o'clock, in fact, lately it's been 7:30. I've been going to bed, but then like today, I was up at 3:30. And so I go to bed at 7:30, up at 3:30. You can get so much done from like 3:30 to 7:30. It's not even funny in the morning. But my circadian rhythm is so on that I'm going to sleep about the time people would start having the munchies. So I'm wondering if you could dial in the circadian rhythm, that would help with some of those nighttime munchies as well. I don't know, but it's certainly things to think about. Val says, I'm an early riser and usually early to bed. I eat between 10 and 6 p.m. 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. seems to help my GERD. Yeah, I bet it does. Charming Confessions, I've been trying to figure this out for myself. Still can't decide what is best. So hopefully this research, Charming, is compelling. That would give you a reason to maybe think about trying it. See, here's the thing. There is no harm in giving it a go to see how you do, trying to get all your meals in by, say, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no harm in trying that. Now, depending on what time you go to bed, I go to bed super early, so by 3 o'clock is right at about 5 hours before I go to bed. So if you go to bed at, say, 10 o'clock, then I would think get your meals in by 5. If you're a midnight night owl, maybe you could get it in by, say, 6 or 7 at the very latest. So adjust it to your lifestyle, and I'd love to see how this works for you, especially if you track with a Fitbit or an Oura Ring or something like that, and you track your sleep. Do you see any difference when you make sure your meal is done at least like 5-6 hours before you go to bed? Keto Gramps says, I can't eat after 6 either. Yeah, you feel it, don't you? Freddie Rachel says, this sounds contradictory to the intermittent fasting info that I've seen that suggests skipping morning meals as the optimal fasting window as you're physically active on an empty stomach and burning more. Well, Freddie, that's a great point. I don't think it's contraindicative because you could still intermittent fast Go work out in the morning in that fasted state. And what I'm saying is when you're done with that workout, then have a meal and then have a second meal not later in the day. And if you do it that way, I think you get all the benefits of what those people are talking about, intermittent fasting, going into your workout. And then you still have those meals that fit within that eating window. Now I've started eating earlier in the day. I actually get hungrier earlier now, which I'm really happy about. We are more insulin resistant in the evening after 7 p.m. and more sensitive in the morning. Thank you for bringing that up, the miracle of keto. She's exactly right. Your insulin resistance is so much higher. Even in the most insulin sensitive person, the most vulnerable you are is later in the day, which could contribute to what we're looking at here in this research study that I talked about. That might be part of the mechanism, is your body is more apt to squirt out more insulin later in the day than it would be earlier in the day. So that might be a reason enough too that early in the morning, obviously if you're hungry, that you eat. Or if you're a 1 meal a day type of person, that around midday, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever, have your one meal. It's an argument for doing it earlier in the day as opposed to later. Sam says it certainly makes sense. For what it's worth, a try anyways. Yeah, let me know how it goes. Kimberly says, I try not to eat past 6 o'clock. My friends get upset because we can eat out. Yeah. Keto Glow, Brittany, my interest is peaked. Looks like I'll be trying something new that will hopefully answer the sleep issues. Yes. Yes. Jane, how do you get all of your calories and macros in if you're doing OMAD? You just get them all in. People, they ask this question often. Well, how do you get all those calories in? You just get them in. And if you can't get them in one meal, it's no big deal. But for some of us, OMAD is extraordinarily easy. So typically when I eat 1 meal a day, and I'm a big boy, I can get 21 to 2,300 calories in pretty well. And people, oh my gosh, that's so much food. But when you make fat the primary macronutrient, which you should when you eat a ketogenic diet, dietary fat is your primary nutrient. And for me, I'm aiming somewhere between 75 to 80% as a percentage of calories of my diet coming from dietary fat, and then the rest protein, basically no carbohydrates, doing keto carnivore. It's extraordinarily easy, and it's not as voluminous on the plate as you would think. It's not as much total amount of food as you would think. It could be as simple as a few burgers with that might be cooked in butter if you need a little extra fat. If it's leaner meat, you could throw some cheese on top of that, and it very quickly adds up in a good way. You want to have sufficient calories in that 1 meal a day. So that's how I do it. But if you can't do it, it's no big deal. Split it up into a couple of meals. Tammy O says, interesting, I'm going to change intermittent fasting to eating early intermittent fasting later in the day. Yeah, I think the take-home message that I'm getting from this study is if you're going to eat 2 meals, try to have the second meal a little earlier in the day, because the middle meal, the one at midday, is typically when most people are eating anyway. If you're having 2 meals, you either have morning, middle of the day, or middle day later in the day. And I'm saying make it more morning, middle of the day, and then allow that period of fasting from middle of the day on. Now, the key in this, guys, make sure you're eating enough in that middle meal in the day. You've got to eat enough there, because if you can't go 6, 8, 10 hours after that middle meal of the day before you start getting hungry and have all of these kind of cravings all come on, the reason you get those is you didn't eat enough, plus you didn't eat enough fat in that meal. So make sure if you're going to have your best keto meal, make sure it's the one in the middle of the day. CC Guide Dog says, Dr. Fung wrote an excellent article on this exact subject. Lots of research cited. His conclusion was to eat before 2. And I concur with my Complete Guide to Fasting co-author, Dr. Fung. I think that's a great idea. And I'm becoming more and more convinced of this, especially the way my digestive system feels the next morning after having a late meal. And let's be honest, guys, life happens. Sometimes you gotta eat later in the day, but just know it comes with ramifications. It comes with consequences. And if it means simply taking a concerted effort to make sure you get that meal timing that's perfect so that you digest all the food, and then when you're sleeping, you're no longer digesting and you're now repairing from the day, that's what we're all trying to pursue. Keto Glow, your information's always amazing. You're reading my book today. I'm assuming my cortisol levels are off. Yes, maybe. It's a common practice in other countries to eat bigger meals earlier, says Tammy. Yeah, this is the thing. It's a truly American thing that we eat breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack, midnight snack. It's so American. You go to other countries and they're not even thinking about food. In fact, I remember back when I was in college, I went down to Chile, South America. To Puerto Montt, Puerto Varas. And I remember sitting with the people having our meal. And they have this tradition in the afternoons there around 3 o'clock. Everybody comes home from work. All of the kids come home from school. And they have this thing called once. And at once, they just have this huge feast of food. And they're talking about how their day's going. And it's a beautiful thing because it's like they haven't eaten all day, and then they all come home at 3 o'clock and have once. And I'll never forget that. That's been over 20-something years ago, but I'll never forget, culturally, they get it. They get that part of it is not having to eat so often, but also enjoying each other's company and kind of the fellowship of everything with that. That matters too, guys. I think it's here in America, we have so messed up everything that was right about eating and when to eat and how to eat that we just don't know what's right anymore because we don't have that as our normal anymore. I want to make keto the normal. I want to making sure that you're eating those good 1 to 2 meals a day that you have on keto normal. Right? Keto carnivore question. I don't have general questions on this show. If you have a general question, definitely write to me through Instagram message, or you can email me, jimmy@llvlc.com. I definitely see an experiment coming up on this. Thanks for this rant. You're welcome, Charming Confessions. Olga says, if I eat late, I toss and turn all night. Yeah. Me too, Olga. Miracle of keto, circadian rhythm can't be changed. All humans are the same in this respect. I think keto fasting and following your circadian rhythm is the magic combination. I totally agree. My problem is not being hungry till later in the day. Doesn't that go against don't eat if not hungry? Well, Tammy, certainly listen to your body. And what we're saying here with this new research isn't go against what your body's telling you. It's saying, okay, perhaps your body has become used to what you've been doing, and that's why you feel hunger later in the day. And if you can slowly move it back earlier in the day, gradually over time, I think you could make that happen, and it'll give you benefit if you do that. Oh, there's my friend Keto Karma. Hey, Suzanne, this is one step I made about 3 years ago, she says. I try to stop eating by about 6 or 7 at night. I'm a night owl, and it's helped me a lot. Ultimately, these small, livable changes make a big impact. And you're exactly right, Suzanne. Thank you for chiming in. We have new research that now shows the veracity of that statement. I love the morning empty feeling when I stop eating early. That's another thing, miracle of keto. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, no bloating. Let's just be real, because that's how we roll here on Jimmy Rants. The poop in the morning isn't as bad as it would be if you ate late. Okay, I know, gross, but it is what it is. Yeah, there's just so many good things in the morning. George says, I'll ponder this. My work is from 8 to 5 p.m. I don't wake up hungry. I look forward to the evening meal to relax. Usually early morning and afternoon is rushed between jobs. George, I wonder with your job, he cleans houses for a living. So I wonder, George, if there's a way you could work in midday doing a meal. And so you hit the ground running like you do with your job at 8 o'clock in the morning. maybe like 1 o'clock. Is there a little window in there that you could have an hour to eat and then have your meal and then go back to work, and maybe push your work window to 6 o'clock? So you're still working the same number of hours you do now, 8 to 6, with like 1 to 2 being your feeding window. I wonder if that would be the solution for you. It'd be interesting to try. Alberto said, OMAD, 1 meal a day with carbs. It is impossible. You may end up in the emergency room with an insulin serum, but OMAD with high quality fats is great. Hey, I agree with you, Alberto. Sophia says, I started intermittent fasting a month ago after being on keto for 10 months. As I compressed my window, the volume of food triggered IBS, so be careful. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think this 1 meal a day is the answer for everybody, which is why I'm always very cognizant to say, find what worked for you. And if it works for one person, it may not necessarily work for the other person. So thank you for sharing your experience. Keto Gramps, I knew that just needed you to hear the email again. So Jimmy at llvlc.com. So excited to try this new cycle, maybe break the stall. So Tammy, let me know how it goes. I think this could be an interesting experiment for a lot of people to try. And if you're watching this on Instagram Live, you're watching it on the replay on YouTube, wherever you're watching it, or if you're listening to it on the Jimmy Rants podcast, I'd love to know your experience. So if you try this and you see benefit from it, let me know, because I'm really curious about this meal timing thing. I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it and how it could be a missing piece for a lot of people. So write to me, Jimmy at llvlc.com. Work often determines when your eating times are. That's right, Val. And I understand that. I realize it's a luxury for some people to be able to eat in the middle of the day, because some jobs don't allow that. Or if you work like a later shift, it's hard to, when do you eat? When do you get it in? Especially if you go to work at, say, noon, and then you're not home until after 8 o'clock. When do you eat? So that is it. All right, guys. So that's all we have for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you want to get in on the action, hop on over to JimmyRants.com. You'll see that we try to mix it around, you guys. We've been doing Instagram Lives for a little while here doing this show, but we're trying YouTube Live, and we're also going to try some Facebook Lives to do this show on. So go follow me on all of the various ways that I provide content. And definitely it's at Livin' Low Carb Man at all those places. LIVINLOWCARBMAN on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Here on Instagram, if you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, it does disappear, so you'll need to go over to my YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/LivinLowCarbMan. Or if you just type in Jimmy Rants as a keyword search, you will find the show. Finally, we have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. So until next time, we'll see you then.